Let's get hyped. Welcome into the Husker247 HypeCast. It's Minnesota week, the game that many of us have circled on our calendar, as this is where Nebraska definitely stubs its toe and ruins an otherwise strong start to the season, because the Huskers have not beaten Minnesota since 2018. That's right. Scott Frost's first win is also Nebraska's last win against PJ Fleck and the Gophers. So we are here at Husker247 to break this game down to see if Nebraska can figure out the Gophers in 2025. I am Mike Schaefer, joined as always by Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson. We, of course, are Husker247. And this week's special guest joining us to talk about Minnesota football, PJ Fleck. A run game that isn't particularly good in 2025, but does that matter against Nebraska's defense? We'll find out. Nick Handley of Walnut Media joins us here today. Nick, how are we doing?
I honestly thought you introduced me as PJ Fleck, and I thought, was it because I got like a sort of a golf vest on and the bald head shining ever so brightly?
It could have been like Nebraska's PJ Fleck impersonator, Nick Handley.
Are you wearing capris?
No, I don't.
Dress shoes.
I do not have man prees on. I don't have a tie off to the right, ready to rock and roll for a big game.
Have you ever owned a maroon pair of dress pants?
No, no, I never have. Never even thought the thought has never crossed my mind to like, oh, you know what? I want to really spice it up on the golf course. I'm going to go with some different colored maroon golf pants. No,
have you ever used an oar?
Yeah, probably. I used to go to Camp Pocomoke back in the day, and I'm assuming we were. Yeah, it was an area camp, a summer camp, and I'm pretty sure that at one point we were in a canoe, and I probably used an oar. So I probably did indeed row the boat at one point.
Okay, but you don't know whether you were elite at it or not.
I was not elite at it. No, I never got that on the report that went back to my parents after each session that I was elite in anything. I wanted to be elite in archery, but I don't think I was. I couldn't decide whether I was a lefty or a righty.
Oh, that would be a bit of an issue. Is it? Are you a left-eye dominant individual? Is that the problem here?
I am, but as you guys know, I swing a golf club right-handed. I swung a baseball bat right-handed. So yeah, but I am a lefty that writes really weird. Every once in a while, people will notice I have my watch on my right wrist, and they're like, "Why do you have your watch on your right wrist?" I'm like, "Why do you think?" I'm a lefty. And then they say, I know many lefties that have the watch still on their left hand. Well, those people are crazy, in my opinion.
Dude, we're learning things already in the HypeCast. Nick Handley, left-handed. That's why he can't be PJ Fleck, famously right-handed. So
yes. You didn't ask the key question. You didn't ask Nick if he's ever run like a 70-yard wind sprint to inspire 100 men around him.
Yeah, it is fair. That is fair.
I think you guys all know the answer to that one.
Absolutely, yes. He's run in from the bullpen before. Absolutely,
that's right.
No, we're well aware. We're well aware. All right, so let's jump into this game. Nebraska plays Friday night, Big Fox against Minnesota. Minnesota 4-2, eked out a win against Purdue. Nebraska eked out a win against Maryland this past week. So this is an interesting game here, and it's one that, like I said, in the preseason, in the lead up to this year, when going through the schedule, this has always been a game that I thought was going to be a challenge for Nebraska. We'll see what we think at the end of the show with our predictions. But first, as we do every single HypeCast, we will start on the offense, and we will start with Nick Handley. Nick, 6 games in, has Nebraska's offense largely looked how you thought it would, based on how Dana Holgorsen talked about things this offseason, based on a second year of Dylan Raiola, new wide receivers being brought in, and the continuation of Emmett Johnson as running back 1 in Lincoln?
It's a great question, because if you go back to what Dana Holgorsen would talk about, he always, I thought, stopped short of saying this thing is going to, I don't mean to use the word from his predecessor of this thing's going to pop, but I don't think he ever led us to believe that this thing is going to be a top 25 offense right out of the gate. But I think we, and when I say we, I'm not talking about you guys. I might have fell victim to this a little bit in having that full offseason with Dylan and Dana Holgorsen working together, and also the upgrades on the offensive line. I think I just automatically assumed it would look better. And there are moments, I don't think there's any question, there are moments that this thing has looked obviously markedly better than it was a year ago. But that mid-game lull that all of a sudden we've seen, and the competition has gotten better, but we saw it against Michigan. We saw it against Michigan State. We saw it last week against Maryland, where quarterback seems to be a little bit disjointed. Offensive line, it gets a little bit leaky. So to answer your question, I don't think this looks like I thought it would. Based on what Dana Holgorsen said, it's probably, I don't think this necessarily surprises him. I think there have been moments, especially in the Michigan State game and in the Michigan game, where he talked about basically the overall performance had pissed him off and it was unacceptable for him. But I do think that he understood there were going to be some challenges along the way, but I think he wants to see, obviously, this thing and that trajectory getting better. So from what Dana Holgorsen expected, I don't know if it is much different from what I expected. It is different. And it seems like there is a little bit of that one step forward, two steps back in quarters 2 and 3, which has led Nebraska to give up leads, which I think are very important in conference play when you have those leads. So yeah, it kind of a long-winded way. I would say, no, it doesn't look how I thought it would. I thought it would look a little bit more crisp, a little bit more consistent.
Michael Bruns, last week, Minnesota gave up more than 250 yards on the ground to Purdue. And we saw Emmett Johnson have his best game running for Nebraska with over 170 rushing yards out there in College Park. You combine these two things, and it seems simple, right? Nebraska should be able to run the football on Minnesota Friday evening.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to look a little bit different, I think, than kind of how they approach Maryland. I mean, it felt like against Maryland, Nebraska was very concerned about running the ball in a way to kind of counteract Maryland's edge rushers. Like, I think that was a really big concern for Nebraska going into that game. It's going to be a little bit different with Minnesota. I mean, I think they're kind of a typical Minnesota defense. I think Nebraska can run the ball on them. It's just going to be a matter, I think, of whether Nebraska is willing to kind of continue the drumbeat a little bit in this game, because I think Minnesota can be stout. I think the problem is if you kind of accept that early stoutness and get away from it. And I think those runs will be there late. And, it's going to be on Dana Holgorsen to find some different looks and things that can kind of exploit Minnesota's defense. It's new coordinators, everything else, but it's going to be very similar to what we've seen from Minnesota in the past. I mean, there's not a lot of change there. So, the offensive line is going to need to have another decent game blocking. I think they can, but Emmett Johnson is going to be really motivated in this one. I mean, he's going to have a lot of family in the crowd. He's a Minneapolis kid that was overlooked by everybody, basically. So I think he's going to be pretty motivated. But I think Nebraska is just going to have to be patient and kind of continue to kind of chop away with the running game.
BC. Last week, Isaiah Hunter had another big game coming off of his big performance against Michigan State. We saw Dane Key catch the critical touchdown pass at the end of that game, but it was a little bit quieter for Ja'Cory Barney. We're going to ask you to do the impossible. Predict which wide receiver goes off for Nebraska this week and which one has a little bit quieter of a game.
I would say I'll go with Dane Key. I feel like Isaiah's obviously, been capable the last 2 weeks. 218 yards he's added up, which is really impressive. A lot of it on those screens, but he's just been clutch. But I think Dane Key, we can get lost in the yardage, but had a really sneaky, great game against Maryland. Like, think about it. If you don't take off that first touchdown with the offensive PI, he would have,
which was an offensive PI.
Yeah, he would add 2 scores to his name. Would have had about 60 some yards. Then obviously the one-handed catch. That's why he came here. That's why you brought him here. But I like to circle like those 3 to 5 plays that sometimes get overlooked. And his 2nd and 16 catch in that fourth quarter when they were down 7 on a ball that was behind him, that's a big time receiver there. And so I don't know that he'll have the most yards, but I think this is the type of game where you're going to need your receiver, like you're inside the 10, and we know how it's been there for Nebraska to go make a play like he did against Maryland, and I think he might do it again. So that's why I pick him.
Brunts, the tight end room has had a pretty good start to the season through 6 games so far, several touchdowns for Luke Lindenmeyer. He's been involved in this offense. How would you kind of grade out how Nebraska's tight ends have looked even after the fact they lost Thomas Fidone to the NFL? You lost Nate Borkircher to Texas A&M, and Mac Markway got hurt early in the offseason. How do you feel like Nebraska's handled everything with the tight end position so far in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think Luke Lindenmeyer has really steadied things. And, you look at kind of what Nebraska was lacking when Markway went down. I mean, they basically did not have that second inline blocker that I think they were kind of counting on this year. So you've had to kind of have Heinrich Harburg go in there and do his thing. It's Maryland. You saw Caden Echternock get in there. Carter Nelson, I think, played a snap or two. But, I mean, it's really been a lot on Lindenmeyer's shoulders. And I think for the most part, that group has kind of just been on a steady uptick. And, Lindenmeyer kind of had some games that were maybe not up to par, according to Dana Holgorsen against Michigan, Michigan State. But, I think he's playing pretty good football right now. And, I mean, those 2 catches they made, in the end, around the end zone and in the end zone against Maryland, I mean, those were game-changing plays and not easy catches. So, I think they're doing a pretty good job all around, considering, it's pretty new roles for both those guys. I mean, Luke Lindenmeyer had not played a ton, prior to this season. Heinrich Harburg obviously is making a position change. So it just feels like one of those position groups that's just kind of gradually improved throughout the season. And I think that's kind of all you can ask for a relatively inexperienced group coming into the season.
Nick, we have had a tough time getting our arms around what Nebraska wants to do behind Emmett Johnson this season at the running back position. Against Maryland, though, perhaps we saw the first real answer so far this season. Isaiah Mosey had the best game really as a running back, running the football. He's had better games, at least catching it out of the backfield. What have you sort of seen from this freshman, and how do you think Nebraska can continue to utilize him going forward?
I think the first thing that stands out is if you look at when he was used earlier in the season, and I know we're only halfway through the season, you could tell there was just some fundamental differences there. There was just that natural, true freshman position change, learning it, and some instinctual things that I thought were noticeable. And I'm glad you brought up Maryland, because at one point when I'm watching that game, I thought, okay, that's Mosey's number. That's him. He looked different. And so I think the one thing we knew about him going in was he had that football IQ. He has that mentality where he can pick things up pretty fast. I know it was said by Matt Rule, it's said by Dana Holgorsen that, and even looking at some of the other running backs like Emmett Johnson talking about him, that he's got that build for it. He has that ability, that they weren't worried that they would be throwing too much at him, that this position change would be overwhelming for him. And I think you're starting to see some of that natural ability at running back. And I think that it creates kind of a unique weapon for Nebraska at that position because of his ability as a wide receiver, his ability to get out and maybe improvise when a route breaks down, that he can sit in a space as opposed to continuing it and build a little bit of that chemistry with Dylan. And I think him running the football is obviously a big part of this too. But I think when you can add that element of being a legitimate threat as a pass catcher out of the backfield too, that he clearly possesses, I think that's big for him going forward. And I think that gives him confidence that they're using him in both of those ways. Because if you are pigeonholing him to just a guy who's going to line up right on the hip of Dylan Raiola or behind Dylan Raiola, and you're going to get the football and it's not going to be in creative ways in space, I think then that becomes a tougher transition. But the fact that they're continuing to utilize that skill set that he has as a pass catcher, getting him out in space, but also being able to hand the football off and allowing him and his vision to essentially develop, especially at this level, at the Big Ten defenses that he's going to see, I think that learning process, I think, is probably a bit more expedited. And I think you saw that against Maryland. So I think it's a really nice change of pace, but I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on what he could truly be.
BT, let's finish up with the offensive line. Only one sack allowed in the Maryland game. Dylan was under pressure at times, but still, Nebraska cleaned it up after the games against Michigan, Michigan State. What are your sort of thoughts on how things sit with Nebraska's offensive line going into this Minnesota game?
I mean, more positive. It was one of their better games. They established the run early. I think they were pretty determined after hearing, can they run it to show off there. And obviously they'd heard about the 12 sacks allowed. Dylan did a nice job too. I think, like, avoiding a couple things like we could be talking about the sack on the last drive. But he was able to elude it and find Lindenmeyer and get that thing cooking. But yeah, it was solid. And I think Elijah Pritchett deserves some credit because he had a rolled ankle going into that game and saddled up and played all right. And then you got to like a story like Corcoran. Well, you don't talk as much about him anymore, but he comes in at the end and was part of those winning drives at left tackle, played, I think, 18 snaps. So it was definitely a step forward. And now it's like, okay, keep the pedal down. And I know some of these guys weren't associated with past Nebraska, Minnesota games. I'm not saying to live in the past, but maybe in the back of their heads, like, this has been a matchup where Minnesota's O-line has gotten the better of the story in these 5 games, the last 5 years. I wouldn't mind throwing that in front of guys' faces this week a little bit and seeing how they respond to that.
Let's dive over to the defensive side of the ball. Brunts, what can you tell us about Drake Lindsey? What have you seen when you've watched a little Minnesota Gophers football this year? I know you were tied into that Cal game back in September. But what do we know about Drake Lindsey and kind of how would you compare him to the quarterbacks of Gophers yore?
So Tanner Morgan, I mean, he's basically been the
Ethan Kaliakmanis.
No, Philip Bates. Come on.
Philip Bates, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting Minnesota team because it's not kind of what you think of Minnesota. I mean, it's not Mo Ibrahim getting the ball 50 times a game. Like it's just, that's not how they're built or haven't been built to this point. Lindsey's a good thrower though, and can make some throws. I think Minnesota's a little bit better at wide receiver than maybe what they've been in the past. That's my kind of just passing sense of things, but I don't know. It still kind of feels like it's going to end up being kind of the same type of game where it's going to be a one-score type thing. They don't turn the ball over much. It's just kind of a steady Minnesota offense. It's just kind of a different way of doing things. I mean, it's really weird to see Minnesota as far down in the rushing numbers as they are right now nationally. I mean, that's just not kind of how they've done things. But I don't know. It's fascinating because Nebraska's gotten a really interesting tour of all of the freshman quarterbacks in the league so far through the first kind of half of the conference season. I mean, I think Lindsey's got a really bright future. And Nebraska, I think Nebraska, though, if they're able to dial up some pressure, I think can kind of rattle him a little bit.
BC, John Butler spoke on Tuesday, and he didn't seem, correct me if I'm wrong here, he didn't seem particularly wowed by what the defensive line and the linebackers did in terms of getting pressure on Maryland out in College Park. How big of a factor do you think that's going to be on Friday night for Nebraska to get after Drake Lindsey, especially considering he's throwing 30, 35, 40 times in games?
Yeah, he wants QB hits. Like, someone brought up the stat that was floating around that Williams-Nwaneri had 8 pressures. He's like, well, they give you a pressure when you're sort of in the vicinity of the quarterback. Guy gets credit for it. But did you actually hit him? Did you make him on his next throw want to hurry it because he's been taking a beating? That's what they did to Aiden Childs. That's why the wind was part of it. But he floated 2 passes that were ridiculous, I think in part because Nebraska was in his head. And it served Deshaun Singleton well. So, yeah, they've got to finish around the QB. That's a thing that's been a problem. And he's noted it. They've had guys sort of in the area of quarterbacks at times, and they've either overran it or, allowed a play to extend when it probably could have been a sack. So that's going to be a big part for this defense. It's a big game for guys like Williams-Nwaneri, Dasan McCullough, to sort of enforce their will early. And make the young guy take some knocks and see if he can hang in there after that. So, but he also said, as much as they're throwing it, he said, and I don't know if he was trying to coax Minnesota into something, but he's like, I think they'll run it at us. Like, I think why would you not? He said, And so that was probably the takeaway quote. So they know teams are like Maryland did it. I mean, we talked about how bad their rushing offense was all week last week, 128th in the country, and they were leaning on Nebraska in the third quarter. The last thing I'd say, though, Nebraska did have momentum at the end of that game more than I thought when I went back and watched it. Like after you get past the 24-24 part, the defense really stepped up to adjustments and started to get a little more pressure. So hopefully that's a stepping stone into this week.
Handley, BC jumped the gun a little bit. I did want to ask you about Minnesota running the football here. They struggled against Purdue. They've struggled in other games this year to get things going. Is Nebraska the right antidote as a rush defense for what ails that Minnesota offense?
It's hard to say they're not, because look at like BC brought up against Maryland. And that was the thing where I thought Nebraska defensively would make Maryland so one-dimensional because the running game would be non-existent, yet Maryland had a concerted effort. And Michael Loxley talked about that a week ago and said, yeah, their secondary is good, but how good are they at stopping the run? And then obviously your counter would be, well, how good are you at running the football? But they still committed to doing that, and it paid off for them where they were in a position to win that game late. So I don't have any hesitation whatsoever that not only will Minnesota make that commitment like PJ Fleck teams often do, a more healthy Darius Taylor is, in my opinion, is a problem to really any defense. He was very lackluster in that game against Purdue, as you pointed out, but Darius Taylor going into the season, there was a lot of hype about him having to battle through the various injuries that he's had early this season. But as a healthy Darius Taylor and a team that still is very much committed to running the football, that's a concern to me. It absolutely is. When I see the way that this game plays out, and I know we'll get to this later, is Minnesota, without question, are at their best. And I don't care who their offensive coordinator is. I don't even care who their quarterback is. They do such damage on the play action because of what they're able to establish with the run game. And so I don't think that changes at all. And I think they understand, knowing that Nebraska is a little bit more weak against the run than what they are with the pass, trying to set up a young quarterback that's trying to get a clip better than 60% completion percentage. The best way of doing that and getting him confidence and seeing that completion percentage go up is by staying committed to the running game. So we talk about Nebraska trying to be committed to the running game and be more consistent. I think that goes double for what Minnesota will try to do with Darius Taylor. And, they've got kind of a 2 running back system as well. I think that is a major concern for me in this game.
Let's just jump right into predictions. We're going to move this along a little bit here, and we're going to talk about our picks to click. I think there's no shortage of options. I am going to get one off the board right here. I will go Dasan McCullough, who BC mentioned this, might have had the play of the season for Nebraska with that tackle to get the stop on third down. It kind of sent Maryland into a little bit of a shock as to what to do on fourth. They took the delay of game, they punted, and it sort of helped set Nebraska up moving forward. So I think Dasan McCullough, who's been playing pretty well in conference play this season, continues it on Friday night against Minnesota. We will go with Michael Bruntz.
I think it's Javen Wright again. I can't remember if I picked him last week. Sorry, Handley.
Yep.
Pick somebody else.
I'll go down the list then.
Pick somebody else.
He was mine too, and I was like, someone's going to take him, but yeah. Good call though.
Back to back, I think he's played his best games at Nebraska. It's going to be another game where they're going to need him to be good in coverage. I mean, I think that was the other piece of it against Maryland, but it was really good against the run too. I mean, I don't know what the narrative is for a 7th-year guy. When the light finally comes on, but the light has finally come on for him. I don't know if it's because he's able to practice all the time now. He's actually healthy, what it is, but I'm going to go with Javen Wright as another what's going to be, I think, a really important game for Nebraska's defense. He's going to lead the way.
All right, Handley, were you able to come up with a backup, or do we want to go to BC first?
Yeah, I got one, and I'm going to stay consistent to where we've all gone with the defensive players right now, and I would say Deshaun Singleton, because not only has he been a ball hawk, and John Butler is right. Those were 2 of the easiest interceptions he'll ever had in that Michigan State game. But his ability to come up and help out in the run, and I think also just what he's shown being multidimensional as that true defensive back that you want to be able to, in the Big Ten, be able to come up, assist in the run, but also be a good cover guy, be a ball hawk, and be all over the field. And I think that this game, I think there's going to be a lot of play action attempts and opportunities for Minnesota where they're going to try to at least attack that area of the secondary that I think Deshaun Singleton can really benefit if Nebraska gets any type of pressure, if they're able to maybe neutralize any type of running game. So, but I think Deshaun Singleton is going to be instrumental in both of those areas and trying to help stop the run, but also obviously a major player in the secondary. So I'll go with Deshaun.
All right, BC, who you got?
I'll do Emmett Johnson. I believe in sports storylines, like when you're watching March Madness and they show the mom like that, and she's got a great story, and you're watching his kid. It just takes off from there, and the kid finishes with strong in the last 8 minutes after that TV shot. Emmett going home is going to have some tough yards. Like, I agree with sort of the setup we had, where I don't think it's going to be easy against Minnesota's defense, but he's going to make a play or two sort of and just determine we're not going down like this fashion, sort of like he had in the fourth quarter, because I think he's that type of kid who he carries that chip on his shoulder. He's had it since he was recruited and not recruited by them, actually. And he'll carry that forward into this game. And he has a chance down the stretch. Everybody's like, oh, he's a good back. He is now on that tipping point where people are saying, actually, maybe we've undersold it. Maybe he can be like that stud, and like this is an opportunity to further that idea.
All right, BT, I got a couple questions because you went with Emmett Johnson here, and it kind of blends into, I'm going to have you make some oddly specific guesses. Do you think Fox will have highlight film from Emmett Johnson in high school when he played for the Academy of Holy Angels and was going for like 2,000 yards, former Gatorade Player of the Year as a senior in Minnesota? Do you think Fox will roll that out?
Yeah, they will. If it were FS1, I'd say no, but this is the big boy shot. I think they.
You don't
will,
think Tim Brando can be trusted to? I don't
want to get into the Tim Brando stuff. Tim Brando's had a long, distinguished career. I know it was a bad call a couple weeks ago. I won't go there.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't force you into a Tim Brando box. But the second question, will Fox have cameras on Emmett Johnson's family, as it's expected there's going to be a lot of them here for this
Yeah,
game?
I think so. That's why I think he's going to at some point do something. I totally I don't know what it is about sports, but it's when they if your team you're playing a game against someone and they show the other side's family and tell a tearjerker of a story about it, I need to walk out of the room. I'm like, this is not going to go well. It's a stupid thought in my head, but I do think it follows suit more than it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you end up with J.J. McCarthy throwing a pick six while his family's watching right there in person. I agree.
It doesn't always go well. You're right.
100%. You nailed that one, Brian.
Yeah.
No argument there. All right, oddly specific prediction time. Brunts, what do you got?
Yeah, this was a tough one. I really had to dig deep. I'm still digging deep. I was kind of hoping you were going to go with somebody else first, but
sorry.
Alas, here we are. I'm filibustering. I think that I'll go back to the well-known well. I think Nebraska's tight ends are going to have a game in this one. I think we're going to see a touchdown pass to Luke Lindenmeyer. Heinrich Harburg's going to catch a touchdown pass. It's going to be phone booth warfare, guys. And it's going to be a big tight end day for Nebraska's tight end. So I will say a touchdown for each. Lindenmeyer's going to go for 18 yards. Heinrich Harburg, they're going to do a little okey doke, something around the goal line. So I'm going to say 3 yards for Heinrich Harburg, 18 for Meyer, 3 for Harburg. Lock it in.
All right. Anybody else need a filibuster? So I should go somewhere else. You guys good?
Good.
Handley looks like he's ready.
Something about Friday night games, and I'm trying to separate college football from the NFL when we have the Thursday night games, but weird crap always happens, and we know that. So that leads me to believe that there will be 3 scores in this fashion. We will have a special team score. We will have a defensive score, and we will have a trick play score in this game. I don't know who. I would like
Alex Bullock? Is he coming over from South Dakota State to catch a touchdown from Jeff Sims in Arizona State?
Yeah.
That would be a trick play.
After he drops the ball, dusts it off, picks it up, and then runs the other way. That's a great call because that was the Matt Rule debut with Nebraska too.
It was
And
the first touchdown of the Matt Rule era.
And we all watched that player like, this is going really bad. This is not going to, oh, wait, no one's over there. Okay, go ahead. So, yes, I think we might see, and Brunsey brought up Harburg. I think there's always at least that fascination or that want to get him involved in something like that. With the speed of Barney and all of those guys, I could see a trick play element actually clicking here. Special teams is obviously trending upward for Nebraska. I could see that. Maybe a punt return. And, I think we're going to see a defensive score in this one too.
BT.
Andrew Marshall's going to have a pick 6. Like, I think Andrew Marshall's played really well.
There's my defensive score.
Yeah.
There you go.
But he hasn't.
Thanks.
He had the nice tackles at the Michigan State where it's a TFL, but he hasn't had that one, like the pick 6 I'm talking about, that play where it's like, okay, there it is, the defining play of his season, a season that's going really well. They're going to test him. He's going to jump a route, take it back about 45 yards. I also think they will block a punt, and we're going to start to get, we're not going to say Jameer Khan's like Baron Miles to go old school in my Husker Rolodex, but we're going to start to talk more about like, this guy's a dude on special teams. The problem is this punt will kind of get out enough and then bounce, so it'll be like 25 yards. So it's not going to be a full-fledged block.
Like a partial block?
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Cool.
I feel like I should save this one for a little bit later in the season, but it's hot right now. And Minnesota's been doing a bunch of film study, and they think Nebraska has a tell. And they're sitting on that tunnel screen to Isaiah Hunter. And Dylan Raiola is going to hit him with a pump fake on the screen. And Dane Key's actually going to leak out from the blocking duties and be wide open for a touchdown over the top for Nebraska. Ooh. So they are going to trick up Minnesota, hitting the pump fake on the tunnel screen, then Dane Key down the field. Touchdown for Dylan Raiola. It's going to be 46 yards. We'll say it also happens in the second quarter to kind of, get Nebraska off that second quarter schneid right now.
That's a good call.
I love that. Yeah.
All right. Let's make predictions here. I am fascinated because I know how some of us felt in the preseason. Do we still feel that same way now? Michael Brunts is shaking his head yes, but we're not going to go to him first because we've been doing that a lot. So we're going to go to Nick Handley.
Yeah, so in my preseason predictions, I had this as a loss. And a lot of that was largely based on not necessarily Nebraska's history with it, but that short turnaround I thought makes her a unique challenge for Nebraska. And then given the way PJ Fleck, because I have so much respect for the way that he has his teams prepared for games like this, despite what type of roster they had. I'll never forget the COVID year where they could have easily canceled that game. And he brought in a MASH unit and they dominated a rather healthy Nebraska team. And that to me right there was salute to you. People can say what they will about his shtick and everything, but he seems to have those moments. And so all of that I put into the preseason prediction of, this just feels like a short turnaround, tough time. Nebraska falls short. I don't think Minnesota's as good as I thought they would be though. And I think Nebraska, they have elements. And I think as much as they're trying to forget the past, I think this one has maybe a little bit more under the radar been circled, especially for this upperclassmen group and for a team that didn't get a chance to play this Minnesota team a year ago after they were so close last time being in Minneapolis and just could not close out the game. I think they will. I think this is a one-score game, and I think Nebraska continues what has been a very nice role reversal of winning close games. I think they get a lead, they hold on, and I think Nebraska wins this one 27-24.
BT.
Yeah, I sent a Q&A back to Ryan Burns of our Minnesota site, and I had 31-23, and I like to usually stick with that, but I'm going to up Nebraska's point total by 3 because I also said they'd cover. So my official prediction is 34-23, which would be the score of the 2013 game where Martinez was injured or didn't play, whatever it was. I can't remember the whole storyline, but
he played and he played injured.
Yeah, he played bad.
That's right.
Didn't play well.
The thing about it is the offense has scuffled here and there, but Dana puts up points kind of. I mean, they find their way to points. Like 38 against Michigan State, 34 last week. I just think somehow they'll get to the mid 30s. It won't always look pretty, but they end up scoring.
Brunt.
Yeah, very wise old baseball coach told me Dana didn't forget how to score points. But let me ask you this. Nick Handley, where were you in October of 2006?
Oh, I would have been in Omaha. I hadn't gone to Columbus. I hadn't met Mike Schaefer yet. But yeah, I was in Omaha. I don't know where I was in October. Probably just coasting along in life.
Were you watching Nebraska win road games in back-to-back weeks against Iowa State and Kansas State? Because that was the last time it happened, Nick.
Obviously, because I took all that stuff for granted. I just expected that to happen.
Okay. Well, I had this as a loss preseason. The thing that's been surprising to me to this point is the poise that Nebraska has played with, even when things have gone a little bit sideways. That's a big change. And it feels like this is going to be a test of that I think Nebraska is going to pass. I think it's going to be a one-score game. I think Nebraska wins this one 24-20. I think we get the two tight end touchdowns. I think Minnesota's Coy Parich scores somehow in this game. He just kind of finds a way to make plays. I don't know if it's going to be a turnover or what, but it's going to be, another tight, pass the Rolaids type game. But I think Nebraska wins at 24-20.
I think this game goes one of two ways. Nebraska either straight rolls on Friday, as there seems to be a lot of confidence in what the Huskers can do from the money people in Vegas and everything else, or this is an incredibly tight back and forth game where Nebraska just continues to give Minnesota life and opportunities. Unfortunately, I think it's the second one, and I'm going to stick with my preseason prediction. I have Nebraska losing on Friday, and losing in stupid fashion, a 23-20 loss for the Huskers, in which Minnesota walks it off with a field goal. PJ Fleck says something like culture over stars or culture over transfer portal or whatever. And then we spend all of the next week leading up to the Northwestern game wondering if Nebraska was distracted because of the Matt Rule Penn State talk. So this is the darkest timeline. I apologize. Nebraska 5-2 with a loss to Minnesota. How's that for the end of your HypeCast? I should have went first. That's just what a terrible way to end it. Just bad.
Leaving the table.
Right. Yeah, I should just leave the show now. You guys finish.
You pulled the rabbit out of the hat, and the rabbit was dead.
Yeah, I was missing a leg.
Oh no. I need to see Nebraska win this game. Everything points to this should be a game that they roll. I think they're better than Minnesota, but these are the sort of things that they've given away time and time again. And, Matt Rule's been in this situation multiple times where you just need the one win to check the box and then you move forward with the season and they stub their toe. And I just need to see them do it. And I think Minnesota's better at just showing up and grinding out a game than Nebraska is at this point.
You said the alternative was they roll. So if Nebraska's in a close game, you don't like that for them in this one.
Yeah, I just for some reason think that all the mistakes from the previous weeks will catch up to them and they won't be able to overcome it. I don't think they can have another second and third quarter where they look vastly inferior to the team that they're playing and still come out on top because they dominated the first and the fourth. I think if they start off hot on Friday, they're going to continue that throughout the rest of the game. But otherwise, I just kind of think Minnesota pulls Nebraska down into the muck, and then they come out on top as they have done. I just think they're built for that. They play stupid, ugly games, and they win them. When Nebraska has played stupid, ugly games, they haven't been able to win. Maybe that changes this year, but I'm not willing to predict it yet. And so I'll go opposite of everybody here and go with the loss. So that's how we're ending things here. And with that being said, get to Husker247.com.
I said 34-23 Nebraska.
27-24 Nebraska.
You can find more uplifting content like that. Or if you really want to, yell at me and let me have it, come to the Cross Strain Brewing. Actually, no, this event. Don't do that. This event takes place before the podcast is released.
In December, Mike. We got another one in December.
Someone save me. Brunts, finish this out. I need to stop talking.
Well, we're going to have plenty of coverage from before Nebraska's matchup with Minnesota, during and after Friday's game. As Mike was trying to eloquently say and breaking the fourth wall on when this is recorded, in December, we'll be at Cross Train Brewing along with Nick Handley and Grant Hansen discussing the end of Nebraska's football season, some volleyball, probably some Husker basketball. There'll be more details on that when it comes out, but we appreciate you listening. We'll have everything at Husker 24/7, and we'll be back with another HypeCast next week.